there, and welcome to the Alberta Update, a first-hand look at what's happening in your province and with your government. I am your host, Bruce McAllister. Thank you for being with us today. Well, much of the focus of the Alberta government has been on the teacher strike, the labor dispute with Alberta teachers. Earlier this week, the government tabling legislation to send the teachers back to work so our kids can get back to the classrooms. We will talk about this in depth today with Education and Childcare Minister Dimitrios Nikolaitis and others who will join us for some context. We will, of course, cover all the other issues and details that your government is working on. But we want to begin today with a clip from the speech from the throne delivered by Her Honor, the Lieutenant Governor Salma Lakhani, to kick off this session of the Alberta Legislature.
2.5 years ago, we gathered in this chamber following the 2023 provincial election for the first throne speech of this 31st legislature. At that time, Albertans found themselves in the midst of a tumultuous political storm that threatened our province's very economic and social fabric in profound ways, as the then federal government's policies constrained our energy sector, interfered in multiple areas of provincial jurisdiction, and undermined the integrity of the power grid Albertans rely on for light and to keep their families safe on cold Alberta winter nights. That political storm then intensified further as our largest trading partner and ally threatened unprecedented tariffs on all Canadian exports headed south, including on all Alberta energy and agricultural products, which would have resulted in tens of thousands of lost Alberta jobs and billions in lost provincial revenues. In the midst of that tumultuous time, at perhaps the most critical juncture in our province's modern history, Alberta's government made a promise in that 2023 throne speech. It was, and I quote, "The world needs more Alberta energy, not less, and Alberta's government intends to empower Albertans to deliver it," unquote. Honorable members, that is exactly what this government has done every moment since that time, and it will continue to do so until the job is done.
Can watch the full speech from the throne on the government's priorities by going to alberta.ca and following the links. Well, it's been a challenging few weeks for parents, for kids, for teachers, and everybody impacted by the Alberta teacher strike. Earlier this week, the government tabling legislation, sending the teachers back to work and getting the kids back to the classroom. Education and Childcare Minister Dimitrios Nikolaitis is standing by. He's been working round the clock on this. We will talk with him momentarily. But first, here is the Premier and the Minister with a look at some background on how we got to this point and why the government chose to use the notwithstanding clause to get our kids back in the classroom.
My fellow Albertans, tonight we want to speak directly to our province's parents and teachers. On behalf of your provincial government, we want to share the steps that we've taken today to get students and teachers back in the classroom, and why we must now take action to prevent further learning loss for our students. Beginning in early 2024, the Teachers Employer Bargaining Association, or TEBA, and the Alberta Teachers Association, or ATA, began negotiations for the 2024 to 2028 bargaining contract. The initial ask from the ATA was for a 35% wage increase for teachers, and the Government of Alberta's initial position was an 8% increase. The two sides met regularly over the next year, eventually reaching what would be the first of two tentative agreements on April 2025. This offer extended teachers the same 12% general wage increase agreed to by nurses. The tentative agreement also included competitive pay increases to keep pace with what teachers earn in other provinces, and hundreds of millions of dollars in supports for classroom complexity and sizes, with teachers providing a great deal of input into how those dollars would be spent. These general raises were worth more than $12,000 a year by the end of 2028. The deal also contained further adjustments to pay that would have provided some teachers as much as a 17% increase. Despite the agreement being recommended to teachers by their union as meeting the needs of teachers expressed in our negotiations, teachers voted down the agreement on May the 6th. The ATA then took a successful strike vote that would have expired on October the 7th if not utilized. At the same time, in late June, the ATA's negotiation focus shifted away from working collaboratively to address classroom complexities and toward requesting a firm commitment to hire additional teachers instead. We continued to bargain in good faith with the hopes of reaching an agreement. In late September, our government agreed to the union's proposal for hiring 3,000 more teachers and providing the teacher pay boosts earlier in the settlement period. Once again, the union's bargaining committee recommended the deal discussed at the table to teachers. That deal was also rejected.
Now, we understand the frustration that teachers are feeling. We know that some are struggling with larger class sizes and others are struggling with more complexity in their classrooms. And we know as well that some teachers are struggling with both of those challenges. We've worked with the ATA leadership to offer a deal that would reduce class sizes, offer increased supports for complex student needs, and pay our teachers more. In the background of these negotiations, our province is also facing financial challenges. The budget for this year, as of the first quarter, is going to have a deficit exceeding $6 billion. As global energy prices continue to be lower than forecast and the market continues to be unpredictable, we cannot say whether the situation will improve or worsen. However, despite these challenges, the government has continued to invest in education funding. The budget for the Ministry of Education and Childcare is going to increase more than 20%, from $10.8 billion in 2024 to $13 billion in 2028. Not only that, we've also committed $8.6 billion to build and renovate 130 schools by 2030. That brings us to the teacher strike that began on October 6, a strike that has taken 51,000 teachers and more than 740,000 students out of the classroom for weeks. The strike has disrupted student learning for the second time in just 5 years. Many of our students are still working to catch up from missed in-person learning due to COVID-19. This cannot happen again. This government will not allow students to face substantial learning losses due to a breakdown in bargaining.
To keep our students learning, the Government of Alberta will be tabling legislation that will put teachers and students back in the classroom where they belong. Learning will resume and the disruption to the education of Alberta's students will end. With this action, we are determined to meet the needs of teachers with a new legislated contract that will include substantial pay increases of at least 12%, with 95% of teachers making even more, up to 17%. This means starting salaries will be at least $70,000, with our most senior teachers earning all the way up to $119,000. Substantial increases for substitute teacher rates of pay, with some receiving up to a 20% boost. Hiring 3,000 new teachers and 1,500 new education assistants. This deal was the last mutually agreed upon deal and proposed to teachers by the ATA in September. This deal went $300 million over the agreed upon deal proposed by the third-party mediator in May 2025.
And we're doing this because we hear teachers' concerns about classroom complexity and sizes. We want to be clear. The government wants teachers to have the resources they need and pay them a fair salary for the essential work that they do. However, Alberta's families, and more importantly students, cannot sustain any more learning disruption.
If this legislation is passed, teachers and students will be back to work starting on Wednesday, October 29th. We wish we did not have to take this step and that we could have reached a negotiated agreement. We encourage the Alberta Teachers Association leadership to work with us to find an effective path forward so that we can continue to provide a world-class education system for our students for years to come. But our job is not done. In fact, the hard work starts now. We will continue working with school authorities, teachers, and families to implement innovative solutions that address class size and complexity, and that support students and teachers across the province. We'll have more to say on those steps soon.
And joining us now is the Minister of Education and Childcare. Minister, there is never a perfect solution in a labor dispute. We all know that. We've seen enough of them. Listening to your comments and those of the Premier and your government, what's clear is, although not perfect, your government decided we had to do something to get our kids back in the classroom.
Yeah, that's right, Bruce. At the end of the day, the most important thing here is getting our kids back into the classroom. That has to be the most paramount consideration in everything that we're doing. And I've had an opportunity to actually look at studies from other provinces and the United States and other jurisdictions that show a 3-week strike or longer negatively hurts and impacts children's academic success, their psychological well-being, their emotional well-being. And there's some studies suggesting even long-term consequences, that students are less likely to graduate, less likely to attend post-secondary because of a 3-week strike disruption. So it's incredibly important that we do everything possible to get our kids back into the classroom, and that's always going to be priority number one.
All right, the video you and the Premier did a terrific job of communicating how we got to where we are today, how the negotiations went. All of that said, in looking forward, in trying to find a solution to the disagreement with the teachers, complexity in the classroom has become a major point of a bone of contention for them, clearly. Could you describe complexity to those who maybe aren't aware, how our classrooms have changed and what you're seeing and what teachers are dealing with?
Yeah, I think actually we're one of the only provinces that uses the term complexity. Most others actually use the term composition. And so that might help people make a quick solution in their mind as to what we're talking about. But effectively, we're talking about the makeup of the classroom, because no two students are the same. And the challenge is that we can have students in the exact same classroom who have behavioral challenges, learning difficulties, or have individual personalized learning plans because they require individual learning. There may be students who speak English as an additional language, or refugee students. So it has to deal fundamentally with that composition. And what we're seeing is the composition is becoming more and more challenging. And it's becoming way too difficult for a single teacher to be able to manage 2 kids with behavioral issues, 6 children who speak English as an additional language, and another 4 who require individualized learning plans within a class of 29. I think we could all agree that that's an impossible task.
That's it. So listen, inclusion used to be a word that people used and thought was the best way to do education, put all of the kids the same age level in the same class, so they get that time with their peers. We're seeing from what you're explaining, what teachers are complaining about, it isn't always working, particularly with the immigration, what it is now in Canada. The amount of kids that come here are having trouble with the language is a huge issue. How do you go about addressing complexity? How do you intend in dealing with this?
Well, I think there are a lot of different approaches. And I was just speaking actually with my counterpart in Saskatchewan to learn a little bit more about what they're doing. They've created this concept of a complexity teacher that is available inside of schools to be able to provide some additional supports. Some of our school divisions already have specialized learning classrooms where students that maybe need a little bit more of a tailored environment are able to participate in that classroom. So we have to look at all of the different options and possibilities. I don't think one size fits all, because of course composition can be very different from one corner of a city to another, or one corner of a province to another. So I think we need to work carefully with our school boards, and we have convened this new task force, this new committee that's going to speak with our school boards, our superintendents, teachers, and others to find out exactly what we need to do to move the needle to help our teachers manage this complexity in our classrooms.
Terrific. Listen, class sizes is another big issue, and a lot of teachers complaining about the number of kids in the class, saying that it doesn't allow for effective learning. All of that said, if you were to divide the amount of full-time teachers in the province with the amount of students, it would be nowhere near 30 to a class. I think it was about 20. You could correct me if I'm wrong. So all of that to say, when you look at that and realize that that's not necessarily the solution, throwing more money at the problem. Can you speak to how you're going to try and address that issue, and whether capping class sizes makes any sense, if any?
Yeah, I think the heart of the solution comes back to what we were saying a moment ago about composition and complexity. I've had the opportunity to talk with a lot of teachers, and I think there are many teachers out there who would have very little challenges in delivering or teaching to a class of even 30 or 35 students if they were uniform in their needs. But of course, that's not the case, and that's where a lot of the challenges come in. What's interesting, though, is I was looking very recently at the class size data from Edmonton Public Schools, our second largest school division in the province, and their 2 out of their 4 divisions meet and are better than the 2003 Alberta Learning Commission's recommended class size levels. They have 23 students on average in Division 2, which is exactly what the 2003 Alberta Learning Commission recommended. It recommended 27 students for Division 4. They're at 24. So what I think is really the case here is that we have some real burning hotspots. And I have directed our school divisions to provide us with a classroom by classroom breakdown of the exact number of students who speak English as an additional language, have other complex needs, so that we can open up the hood and have a clear look at all of the challenges and all of the dynamics affecting every single one of our classrooms, and use that to help us deploy more resources to help those areas that have more pressure.
What a terrific idea to have all of the data before you try and come up with the solution. Listen, good for you. Last year, you announced an unprecedented school build. I remember Cabinet talking about it, the need to do something different, something great with the amount of people moving to Alberta. I think it was nearly $9 billion, and you were building and renovating 130 schools to create additional spaces. I would imagine many of those on the way. How many additional spaces are we looking to create?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It was about $8.6 billion that we're investing to build and renovate 130 new schools by 2030. That's going to unlock 200,000 student spaces. It's some have called it the largest school construction program in Alberta history. It is quite aggressive. It's a very significant school build, and you're absolutely right to talk about the challenges that we faced. Our population absolutely exploded in 2023. It was a record year in terms of population growth, and one of the key contributors for that was a record number of new Canadians coming to our province. And I know that many other provinces are facing these challenges as well. I know Premier Eby, NDP Premier Eby in British Columbia, has also raised some significant concerns with the federal government over immigration policies, and says that it's unsustainable, it's unmanageable, and we're certainly feeling those pressures as well. But that being said, we're stepping up to the plate with an aggressive school build and more dollars to hire more teachers and educational assistants.
All right, well put. Listen, I know you've been working hard at this, and these are indeed challenging times, but we appreciate your efforts, and I know we'll have you back on to talk about it again. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bruce.
There is the Minister of Education and Childcare in the province of Alberta, Dimitrios Nikolaitis. Well, Alberta's energy sector is also top of mind these days. It usually is, of course, as discussions continue to try and get the federal government on side to try and get a pipeline built to the West Coast so we can get more of our product to international markets, diversify our economy. Here is the Minister of Energy and Minerals, Brian Jean, with more on his work in one of Alberta's and Canada's most important industries.
Hello, Alberta. We have so much to be proud of with how we have built this incredible province, largely through our oil and gas industry. Much of this on display right here at the Edmonton Oilfield Technical Society. But I'm not here to remember the past. but instead to look to the future and how we are shaping our energy industry and our great province. My new mandate letter from Premier Daniel Smith charts the path to meet a growing global demand for Alberta's responsibly produced energy products. And there's a lot of great products that come from Alberta, ensuring our energy security and diversifying our export markets with more pipelines to Tidewater has never been more important than it is today. This will not be done haphazardly and randomly. It will be done strategically as we continue to press forward with modernization to our mining industry, as well as how we clean up what's been left behind by previous generations of oil and gas production without adding any cost to the taxpayers. I'm proud to be Alberta's Minister of Energy and Minerals, and my commitment is to put Albertans always first and to make our energy and mining industry the very best in the world.
There is the Minister of Energy and Minerals, Brian Jean, on the Alberta Update today. Well, the Premier introduced Bill 1 into the legislature this week. It is called the International Agreements Act, and we have our Justice Minister standing by to talk about that. But first, here is the Premier as she introduced the bill.
As we return to the legislature, our government is focused on delivering the clear mandate that Albertans gave us to stand up for this province, protect our freedoms, and chart our own path forward. That's why we are taking the next step to defend Alberta's constitutional rights through Bill 1, the International Agreements Act. Ottawa can sign international agreements with other countries. That's their right. But this legislation makes it clear that those agreements will only become enforceable in Alberta if implemented under provincial legislation. Work with us, and we'll get things done. Overstep, and Alberta will stand its ground.
All right, there's the Premier, and here is our Justice Minister, Mickey Amery, for a little more context on the bill. Minister, good day. Thanks for taking some time. I know you guys are going flat out these days.
We're running on all cylinders. Thank you for having me.
Some clarity or some context, Minister, on Bill 1. Why is the government introducing it? The International Agreements Act, as it is called, why is it important legislation, I guess, to insulate us from Ottawa potentially wading into our jurisdiction?
Well, look, thank you for having me, Bruce. It's no surprise that the federal government has tried to insert themselves into Alberta's jurisdiction time and again. Now, we've seen this with the Clean Electricity Regulations, for example, or the Impact Assessment Act. And both of these federal initiatives have had a devastating impact on provincial investment, on investor confidence, and on the growth of our province. We're saying we're not going to take it anymore. When it comes to international agreements that are signed by the federal government, right now we currently have no formal agreement in place that governs the relationship between the provinces and the federal government, especially when it impacts areas of provincial jurisdiction. By introducing this legislation, we want to make it clear Alberta will not be bound by international agreements entered into by a federal government when that agreement has a direct impact on matters of provincial jurisdiction. It's one way that we're showing that Alberta will not allow the federal government to continually trample upon our constitutional jurisdiction.
So I'm going to ask you a bit of a hypothetical, Minister, but I know you can handle this one. What would happen if the federal government entered into an international agreement that was at odds with Albertans, with our desires in this province? What would happen?
Well, look, full stop. Bill 1 is going to say that we simply are not going to let that happen. We know that the Constitution is absolutely clear. There are powers that divide federal and provincial jurisdictions, and neither the federal nor the provincial government has the ability to override an area that falls under the constitutional jurisdiction of the other. Now, when matters or international agreements in areas of provincial jurisdiction touch on mandates of other ministries, those ministries will have the ability to review the agreements and then make a decision on whether or not Alberta will bring forward a legislation that aligns with Alberta's priorities. We know that we're not alone in this. We know that Quebec is doing this. We know that other provinces are looking at doing this as well, because we cannot continue to allow the federal government to bind us in international agreements that impact provinces. These place incredible stress on our provinces, and we need to have a seat at the table. We need to be able to discuss these things. We need to be able to let the federal government know that whether or not we agree with what they're getting into when it comes to the federal arena.
Well, good on the premier and your government for introducing the legislation. Hey, listen, you're a lawyer. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a question. It's off topic for you and your ministry, but I know you can provide some context. So there has been so much talk about the notwithstanding clause, the government using it as a way to get kids back in the classroom where we need them for learning. But some people have miscategorized what the notwithstanding clause is, how it is used. It is there for this very reason. Could you explain to us, maybe not like a lawyer, but as a lawyer to laymen, how this clause works and why it's so important?
Yeah, most certainly. I'll take us back to the time when the charter came into existence, and part of that negotiation across the country was including a clause, the notwithstanding clause, Section 33, which provinces fought so hard for, that allowed a number of different provinces to be able to have a greater say in some of the decisions that were being made, especially when it came to decisions, matters of policy. It is a mechanism that establishes the parliament as supreme, and it creates a balance of power between courts and elected governments. It operates like this: when a decision is made by the courts, for example, that may have an impact that goes contrary to what a province or a policy might be seeking to achieve, provinces have the ability to invoke the notwithstanding clause to say that, notwithstanding the sections of the charter that might be impacted, the province must proceed because it is an area that is of significant importance to us. Let me put that into perspective for just a second when it comes to the teacher strike. We absolutely were hoping to get a negotiated agreement. In fact, from the conversations we've had with the Minister of Education and the Minister of Finance, we know that teachers and government have been engaged in negotiations through their agents, both the ATA and the collective bargaining agent for the government, for more than 18 months. And we know that in March of this year, the ATA and the bargaining agent for the government came up with a approved settlement, basically saying, we like what we see here, we're going to pass it on to our members. That was voted down. In September of this year, another mediated agreement was approved by the bargaining agents for both parties, for government and for the teachers. And it was again put to the teachers. That was voted down as well. We were really hoping to get an agreement here, and unfortunately we did not. Alberta respects the right to collective bargaining. We certainly have seen that because we saw that the strike was the largest educational strike in Canadian history. But at some point, and this is, again, I'll talk to you guys as a parent, at some point, my 3 school-aged children, who are all in public schools in Calgary, were unable to go to school. They were sitting at home. I think the detrimental impact on all parents and all students was obvious. We heard from the Minister of Education, and he said that there are studies all across the country that indicate that a pause in even 10 days for school-age children has a detrimental impact. We had to make a decision. It was a difficult decision, but we had to get our kids back in school. And that's the lens that I will always legislate from, the lens of our children.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, listen, well explained. One more point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this was insisted upon, Section 33, by Alberta Premier Peter Lougheed, wasn't it, as a way of ensuring that the elected officials have a say, as opposed to maybe a progressive judge who might have a different viewpoint. So this is used in these instances, correct?
Most certainly, it's rarely used, but it is used. It's when there are matters of utmost significance. It was spearheaded by former Premier Peter Lougheed. It was absolutely an important component for the ratification of the charter, and I think it is important to have that tool available for all provinces.
Well, we covered a lot of ground today. Minister, we really appreciate your time, and we'll see you again. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
There's our Minister of Justice, Mickey Amery, on the Alberta Update. Well, next we have our Minister of Assisted Living and Social Services with us, and that, of course, is Jason Nixon. Mr. Nixon, thank you for taking some time. It's been an interesting week.
Well, thanks for having me on, Bruce. It's great to see you.
You bet. Hey, listen, Canadians from coast to coast have been looking at their pocketbooks and talking about housing. I think we're more insulated in Alberta than the rest of the country, but still there are issues here. Purchasing a home is becoming more difficult. Is Alberta moving the needle on that front? Maybe start with an update on how we're addressing those issues.
Yeah, look, we have seen a housing crisis across the country. Obviously, Vancouver and Toronto have really been impacted the most at times. But the reality is, with the largest population growth at times anywhere in the world, here in the province of Alberta, we have not been spared those challenges over the last couple of years. Our government actually has been really focused on making sure that we are increasing supply, that we're empowering Albertans, our great industry, home builders, and others to be able to make sure houses can get built, to be able to house all the families that are coming. And we're pretty excited about the great results that have taken place from that focus on red tape reduction and making sure that we're a business-friendly location in the country. We're 12% of the population, Bruce, I should say, and we're over 25% of all homes are being built right now in the province of Alberta. And we're seeing a massive increase in purpose-built rentals, which is really, really critical for things like rent and being able to make sure that there's enough places for everybody to live.
I'm glad you led me right into my next question. That's what I want to touch on. A lot of people choose to rent instead of own, and some of them because, frankly, that's their only option. How is the province faring in the rental market? Are things changing there?
Well, this is the good news. I mean, obviously, every location in the country was challenged by rent increases during the inflation crisis and affordability crisis that was, primarily led by the Trudeau government in Ottawa. Because of that focus, though, here in Alberta, we're seeing great results. We're seeing rent come down across the province by about 7%. Rent come down in our two largest cities, which is important, but also across rural Alberta and some of our smaller cities. And that's as a result of that supply increasing, right? Us betting on Albertans, betting on being able to make sure we could build enough homes has really paid off to make it affordable. And what we're most proud of is out of the 10 most affordable cities anywhere in the country, Alberta has 7 of them. So showing that while we have the Alberta tax advantage, great jobs, and a great place to call home and raise a family, we are also the most affordable province to be able to call home, which really makes us a juggernaut in Canada.
Minister, the critics of your party and the opposition to government always suggest rent control as a way to solve some of these issues. And I've heard you say a million times, this is a terrible idea. So I'm going to ask you now, why is it a terrible idea? Tell us your thoughts and examples as to why.
Yeah, look, I can see why people think that when they first look at it, but the challenge with rent control is it stifles supply. And the reason that we have affordability challenge in the housing market is because we don't have enough houses. So when you bring in something like rent control, people stop building houses, which ends up making the problem worse. And I would refer you to places like New York, where they've experimented with this, and it was a disaster. Many economists have compared that policy to the same as basically bombing cities as far as the destruction that it could do to the economy. And so we rejected that, but again, focus on creating a place that our developers, our home builders, our municipalities could have success in increased supply. And the proof is in the fact that we're building so much, our rent is going down, and other jurisdictions who are playing with rent control in Canada, Toronto and Vancouver, as examples, still have a disastrous housing situation. And here in Alberta, we're, frankly, I think, an example to the rest of the country.
I want to ask you about something else. I know this really doesn't have to do with your ministry in assisted living and social services. However, your father, you're a parent of school-age children, and I think the Premier has asked you to get involved in this, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to ask you about the complexity in the classroom piece, and I think you're going to be working with the Minister of Education and some others to find the data that will help lead us to some solutions in dealing with complexity and large classrooms. Tell us what you're looking for and how it will help.
Yeah, the Premier's asked us to support Minister Nicolaides in that work on complexity in the classroom sizes. In particular, us around helping him with complexity in the context that we are the ministry are responsible for Albertans with disabilities, including children with disabilities. And so we want to make sure that we're at the table advocating, one, for the disability community, for children with disabilities, but also seeing how our programs can connect to the work that K-12 is doing and make sure we can support each other in addressing complexity. And the other area the Premier's asked us to support on is the work that we're doing on the healthcare side. As the Minister responsible for continuing care, we've had a significant amount of work that's gone into unraveling Alberta Health Services data challenges when it comes to what we call alternative level care patients, which is basically the wrong patient in the wrong bed and working to get the right patient into the right bed. And I think the Premier's hoping we can take what we've learned there and be able to give some of those tools over to education to be able to get that classroom size data thing nailed down so we can make the best decisions for Albertan children in real time going forward.
Well, don't let anybody ever say this minister doesn't have a full plate. Listen, appreciate all the work you do, and we'll talk to you again for updates as we move along.
Great to see you, Bruce.
Minister of Assisted Living and Community Services, Jason Nixon, on the Alberta update. Well, the economy, always top of mind. We talked about it just now in the affordability of housing, affordable housing, etc. We're sharing with you a video from the Minister of Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration that will show you the work going on there. Here is Minister Joseph Scow.
Hey there, I'm Joseph Scow, Alberta's Minister of Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration. Our province is known for its opportunity. More than any other province, we drive success for our nation. And because of this, we've created a province where people want to call home. Whether someone works in energy, agriculture, technology, forestry, engineering, manufacturing, or any other career, Alberta opens those doors. And this doesn't happen by accident. We've achieved it by lowering corporate taxes, cutting red tape, and training a skilled workforce that meets the needs of investment. But there's more to do, and the Premier's mandate letter to me makes that clear. Like strengthening Alberta's control over immigration, addressing youth unemployment by prioritizing jobs for Albertans, putting Alberta on the world stage for economic growth through new investment, and continuing to build a skilled workforce responsive to industry needs. Solutions to these means getting more Albertans into the workforce and strengthening our economy with new opportunities for Albertans. And I am proud to lead this as your new Minister of Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration. Thank you.
Minister Joseph Scow. Well, we talked a couple of weeks ago about the contest in Alberta through Service Alberta about Alberta license plates that's going on right now, and we have two finalists for the new plate. We're going to put them up on the screen so you can have a look at them. These are the two plates that have been narrowed down as many of you have voted on your favorites. A few have been eliminated, so you see one with the pump jacks and the cowboys, and the other one with strong and free. And you still have time to make your selection, so go ahead and go to the website on the screen, make your selection, and of course we'll be happy to reveal the winner as we select a new license plate here in the province of Alberta. Well, that is it for this week's Alberta Update, a first-hand look at what's happening in your province and with your government. We appreciate you tuning in. You can find us on all the socials, on YouTube, of course, and on Rumble, and certainly on the Premier's pages as well. Please like, please view, and share. We're here every week when the legislature sits, so that means we will be right back here again next week, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks again for your time. So long.